All right, we're going on an adventure today. We're gonna go take apart a motor that got torched. Brian, that used to own this car, and he has the 8-second Volvo that I did the transmission for. You've seen the car on the channel a few times. He did like a total rebuild on his car and changed to a Holly and changed the transmission and did built motor, everything. And then the second time out on the car, it torched the head. So trying to figure out what happened there. It's kind of one of those like really weird situations. Like everything was built right, tune looked good. Something happened, something went wrong. So we're trying to figure that out. And that's the mission for the day. That's kind of what we're dealing with. You can see that's completely junk. Head's junk. We'll have to see how the block does. I'm going to use the bore scope to check the piston first. So one thing that was noticed right away is this number 3 cylinder. It's the only injector that still has some fuel kind of dripping out of it. So all the other ones are dry, but this one is still wet, and that's the cylinder that it did it to. So maybe there's something stuck in the injector. And these are Bosch 210s. So right now he's just going to go ahead and pull the transmission out, get the motor out, and probably go ahead and pull the head off right away. Alright, so this car here is actually his dad's car, and this is a 6-liter that used to be in his car, and now they moved it over to here. So this is a stock bottom end 6-liter that he went 890 with, and now it's in his dad's car. It's a manual transmission in this one, and this looks like a fun little car. So that's what kind of sucks about this incident is he was going 890s with the stock bottom end on this car and then put the built motor in it, PRC heads, really nice motor, and second time out something happened and torched the head. So we're kind of leaning towards maybe an injector issue, especially with that one being wet at the tip. So he said it's been sitting for about 2 weeks and it's still wet at the tip of the injector. But that's a set of Bosch 210s that he ran last year too. That's the same set of injectors that he went 890 with last year. And he has a 5-micron filter on it, so it'll be interesting to see what the cause is. A little bit of coolant in the intercooler, so you know it's good.
How many dollars worth of ounces of aluminum is that?
Right.
That's probably $10 worth of aluminum right there, since those heads.
Yeah, look at the top of the mount. It's got just like aluminum peppered all over it. Pretty nice hole. It's about from here to here wide.
It's crazy. It doesn't take very long. Just a couple seconds. Look at the back of the manifold. Probably a good one to get to. Looks like it's spray painted silver.
Back of the manifold. Oh, it's crazy.
Look at all this aluminum on here too. Crazy. It's like overspray, but it's all aluminum. All over the rack fittings. Crazy. Should have been a baton twirler.
Says virginity rocks, but he really f***ed this thing.
Yeah. Probably my favorite work shirt.
It's kind of hard to see, but there is a bunch of coolant in the intake, which was verified by what's in the intercooler.
Here to water.
So now we're kind of thinking that there might be bent rods or something, because you said you felt a lot of vibration also. So
I thought I knocked a rod out of it. It felt so violent. It's funny too, because like the one forged motor I've ever had, in junkyard motors last me, they don't blow up like that. This one's in that one now.
yeah, the one that went 8s, how long did you have that in the car?
3 or 4 years at least.
Yeah, so 3 or 4 years and had that one in the 8s, and then second pass on this one, or second time out with this one, which sucks because it's iron block 6-liter, 625 studs, PRC heads, Pro LS pistons and rods. Like, it's a really nice setup. Something just went wrong. But with a bunch of coolant coming out of it, like it had to have come from the cylinder and got pushed out the intake valve probably, and then pushed through the intake, which maybe if there was enough coolant that got in the intake, maybe it went into the other cylinders and potentially bent some rods. Maybe that's where the vibration was coming from, but hard to say. So looking at the data logs, the RPM line comes up, and then like in the middle of first gear it kind of dips, and then there's like a little wobble in the RPM line, and then the air-fuel ratio line gets more erratic. It's still on target, but it's more erratic. You can definitely tell something happened in the beginning of first.
Oil pressure too.
Yeah, and for some reason the oil pressure was like 20 psi higher. So that was the second pass of the day, and the oil pressure was like 20 psi higher than the first pass, which is kind of weird.
It's never been 110 psi before.
Right. So another thing also was it hit 26.6 pounds of boost, and on accident. So you had the boost, like the boost cut set at 26.6, and it never actually hit the cut. Like it never activated the cut. So thinking maybe it overboosted, and that could have created a lean condition.
And the 26.6, that was the top end of the map sensor. That's as high as the map sensor is supposed to read. So I thought, you know, I was fine with running 25 pounds, 26 pounds with this motor. I think that running the boost cut 26.6 just, it didn't cut it. Like maybe it should have been just 26.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have put it at the limit of the sensor.
Yeah, and the pass before that, it was at 58% duty cycle, and it made 18 pounds.
Yep.
And then went to 59% duty cycle, and then it like spiked past 26.
Yeah, and it's only a 4-port. There's no CO2. It has a 4 psi spring in it. I'm surprised. It just seems to do whatever it'll do. Infinite boost, apparently. I thought for sure, like right around 25 to 30 pounds, it just won't make anymore.
Right. And the way that the fuel routing is it comes in the back of the driver's side, and then it was the third cylinder, we think. So it was the third cylinder to get fuel. So if it was a low fuel pressure issue, you would think it would happen on one of the other sides. But it's the third one to get fuel, third and fourth one, potentially the first one, or first cylinder. So we'll see when we get it off.
I'm just gonna let you look.
Want me to tell you if it's a boy or a girl?
I can't get my fingers in there. I don't think this is a good thing. I think the gasket's one with the...
I'm gonna take these washers out. I left. Wait. Oh shit. Now we're gonna wreck the motor.
Why is it so weldy? Oh god. I'm not looking anymore. Just for a little bit. Why is it so stuck?
Ooh.
Oh my god. The block actually looks better than I thought.
This one looks good.
This looks better than I thought too. I'm honestly surprised by that. I thought the chamber was gonna be all effed. Thank God, I can fix that.
Wow, that actually looks really good.
The firing ring did it must just have leaked just enough past it.
Yeah, should be able to weld that up.
Yeah, that won't be a problem. I know a guy.
He's a welder by trade, so that's why he said that.
That gasket, man. Steel beams do melt.
What kind of fuel are you running?
85.
Jet fuel?
Oh, yeah. Melt steel beams. Piston looks okay, from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, not too bad.
I think the block is a little torched though. It is.
Yeah.
That might be junk. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's definitely more than a fingernail. Unfortunately.
I'm gonna get the wrench. Let's just pull the other head off.
Yeah, this actually looks decent.
Looks normal, or at least so far, I thought.
Yeah, everything looks fine on this side.
One cylinder kills an entire motor. The one injector.
Well, now we're going to flip it over and take the pan off and look at the rods, just because it's still a little bit hard to turn with the heads off of it. So we're thinking maybe there's a bent rod or something else going on.
Dry locked. Loctite. That's part of it. I can see it.
Here's number 3. Nothing obvious. The pistons did look like they come all the way up to the top of the deck also.
Yeah, it looks fine.
Alright, so we did a real quick and dirty injector flow test here. We just took the first 2 injectors and primed the fuel pump and then just pulsed the injectors real quick for, I don't know, it was probably open for a few seconds. And we just ran it into 2 cups. And fuel lines are really close. We thought one would be really light and then show like an obvious difference, but didn't really see anything that jumped out. But this is just a wide open test, and we just ran it once and only compared it to the first injector. So obviously this isn't going to show us everything, but it was just to get a quick idea if that one was like obviously clogged up. So he does plan to send him somewhere and get him flow tested. Might just have Hunter do it, and hopefully we can find something. Maybe if we pulse him at like 50% duty cycle or something, we'll see some differences, but nothing obvious. Here's one last look at the head. This part is really not too bad, but it did blow this stuff out, so I think the head is bad. Block is bad. Pistons seem okay. Doesn't look like there's any bent rods. Transmission's still doing okay. The mission first is flow the injectors, try to figure out what the root cause was, because there's definitely plenty of fuel system. It wasn't really being pushed that hard.
450 and a 525 for in boost.
Yeah, unless it like way over boosted and we don't know exactly what it hit, because the boost line come up and flatlined at 26, so it could have been 40 pounds. Never know.
It'd be interesting to know what that wastegate could actually do with the 4 pound spring and no CO2.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think it'd make it much further than it did.
Right. Yeah, especially if 1% difference was only 18 pounds, so you wouldn't think it'd be that much higher, but.
Yeah, from 1% or from 18 to 26.6 was 1% duty cycle. I was trying to be super conservative and ease into it because it was finally actually doing pretty good. Like it did a 1.3 or 1.4 60 foot. And then it was 6.0 in the 8th, which is pretty good. And then
trapped like 148 on 18 pounds.
Yeah, on 18 pounds, and then the pass where it blew up before the 1,000 foot at 138 miles an hour. It went 9.6 still.
Yeah.
It was good for a little while.
Yeah. Another thing we just noticed was that how bubbled out the water jacket ports are. Right here, the big bubble in it. And then these 2 all the way out here, big bubbles in them. Usually you don't see that in the head gasket. So there must have been a lot of coolant pressure also. And the car has a coolant pressure sensor, but it wasn't hooked up, or it was hooked up but not working at the time.
Yeah, I haven't been able to get it to work since, I don't know.
So never really had like a baseline for coolant pressure or anything. But you can see on the head it actually did blow right into this coolant passage. Kind of nicked this spot out. So don't know if it would have been enough to even really catch anything to prevent any damage, because by the time it got out through here, it's already torched most of this. So, yeah, that sucks. Okay, so we'll go over the 2 logs of the day that this actually happened. So this is the first log, and I'm clicked right over in this spot because I wanted to show the 45 psi base fuel pressure. So this is the pass here, first gear, second gear, third gear. Looks like he did pedal it in the beginning, and then boost ramped up kind of slow. So it did peak in this area over here around 18.6 pounds of boost and 61 pounds of fuel pressure. So that's almost 1-to-1, pretty close. 3% closed loop, and I think the max during the pass was 6%. Minimum was -2, -4. So pretty close, around 5-6%. And then air-fuel ratio line is pretty much like right on target, just following as usual So at peak boost in third gear, it's showing that it's using about 840 pounds of fuel, just as a reference point. Not sure how accurate this actually is, but you can see over here the fuel flow peaked around 879, and the injector duty cycle is at 48%. And that 48.9 is actually the peak of the run right here, 48% duty cycle. All right, so let's kind of go through these one by one. So this light blue line is the boost line here, and you can see it comes up and it just flatlines. So this boost line comes up really, really quick, and it peaks right around this 25, 26 mark. 26, it's actually 26.6 is the peak. You can see right here, 26.6. And he had the boost safety set at 26.6. We're not sure like why that didn't trigger if it's actually at 26.6, because it did hit it, but it didn't go over it. So maybe that's why it didn't trigger it, but I always thought that it should hit it if it hits that number. But you can see boost safety down here. It didn't hit any of the boost safeties. There is a chance that this boost trajectory could have continued upward. It looks like it did start to roll over a little bit here around 25.9, but who's to say that this didn't continue to go higher and it was actually making more? Don't really have a way to verify it. So here is air-fuel ratio. You see the target air-fuel ratio line and the actual air-fuel ratio. And it did actually get a little bit richer down here. So in this spot right here is at a 10.8 actual, commanding an 11.4. But what we notice right here is RPM's coming up. In the middle of first gear, it has this little hiccup right here. So something is upset at this point. This RPM dips down, comes back up, and you can see that this shift looks a little wonky. Also, if you look at the air-fuel ratio, you can see that you have a pretty smooth line in relation to after this point right here. Right here at this point, before is pretty smooth. At this point, it's more erratic after that for the rest of the pass. So first thing, you have this little dip in the RPM line. You see air-fuel ratio line become more erratic. And then if I add the closed loop onto this pass, you can see shortly after this, this is where closed loop kind of runs away right here. So this spot here is 1%, 2%, so pretty clean all the way up through first gear. Something happens with the RPM, air-fuel ratio line gets more erratic, and then shortly after that, the closed loop starts to add a bunch. So this is adding about 12 to 14% right here. So what we're thinking happened is like this is when cylinder 3 died, whether it melted off the spark plug or started to put the hole in the head here. Something happened in this hole where we think this was a dead hole, and then this air-fuel ratio line change becoming more erratic kind of confirms that. And then a little bit later, because you have just air, once this hole finally is completely dead, then you have just air going through the cylinder. It's starting to add a bunch to the closed loop because it's seeing air on the O2 sensor. And if you do the math on one dead hole out of 8 cylinders, it comes out to around 12%. And that's what it started adding for closed loop. So just coincidentally. So if we're looking at fuel pressure again, like I said, the base fuel pressure was around 45 PSI. Here's the fuel pressure line coming up. And then it does start to nose over here a little bit, which kind of looks bad. But if you look at the difference between this spot and this spot is 61, and this spot here is 63 PSI. So he's at 17 pounds of boost coming up from 45 to 63. So that's like right in line with where it needs to be. And then it dips down here to about 61. So not really a big drop off in fuel pressure. You do see a little bit of a dip here when the RPM comes down to 57, which is a little lower. But then the minimum of the run is around this 54 range right here. So still 10 PSI above base, but this is also at 26 pounds of boost. So fuel pressure is a little bit low for the amount of boost that he's running. But if you look at the injector duty cycle is still at 74%. So there's a bit of room left on the injector, and the air-fuel ratio doesn't actually start to drift lean. So, and it actually started to go rich right here, went to a 10.8. So we don't necessarily think that that points to like smoking gun being a fuel pressure issue. Because if you look right here where this RPM line starts to go erratic, this fuel flow number is about right in line with the first pass at 20 pounds. So it doesn't look like it's using that much more fuel. At this point, it does start to look like it's using a bunch more fuel because it's adding another 20% right here. And then it did add from 60 to 75% duty cycle and 1,300 pounds of fuel. So it could have just been running out of fuel. It could have been a dead hole already early in the run, which right here doesn't really seem too alarming. 20 pounds, 18 degrees at an 11.7 air fuel ratio, and a good 1-to-1 rise with fuel pressure.